We are talking The Curse of Patasola, directed and co-written by AJ Jones. This feels like it should be a kind of a spin-off of The Curse of La Llorona, which was of course already a spin-off of the Conjuring franchise. But it is actually once again based on a Latino legend. This one tells a story of four friends. Well, I say friends, there's actually two kind of mismatched couples here with a clearly dominant and submissive partner in each couple. And they are off for a kind of weekend of camping and fishing in a remote kind of like nature park. They're stopped on the way by a park ranger who warns them there has been a rash of kind of disappearances within the area and to take care. Now, while they're there, they decide they're gonna kind of tell each other ghost stories and try and scare each other. And one of the kind of the party tells this story that is to do with this particular kind of Colombian curse, where if you say the name of this particular kind of entity, you're essentially cursing yourself, and it will attack people who have been unfaithful to their partners. And it will appear in the image of this kind of beautiful woman try to lure cheaters away and essentially turn into a monster. Now, what will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works first of all. Okay, this movie has, I feel, one huge check in the plus column. I think this movie does an excellent job of really fleshing out some characters. Now, the cast of this movie isn't big. It really has four principal players. You know, we have the park ranger and, you know, that kind of thing. But more or less, it's just kind of you four actors here. So it's not a huge cast, which I think is a plus. So I feel like we genuinely kind of get to know each of these four particular characters, learning kind of quite a lot about them in what I feel is some quite kind of naturalistic kind of dialogue. So each of these four people are, I think, particularly kind of different from one another. But essentially we have two couples where in each of that couple there is certainly a dominant partner in that particular kind of relationship and a submissive one. And there's quite a lot of friction between these kind of like these four people. And there's some quite fun dialogue, I have to say, particularly between our kind of two dominant people, the boyfriend of one particular couple and the girlfriend of the other, and they seem to kind of not particularly get along. And there is some fun dialogue, and I feel like it's done in a way which is, it kind of feels like a real conversation that people would have, albeit I feel maybe the guy is a little bit kind of over the top at times, but I actually kind of quite like this incidental dialogue, not necessarily that drives the plot, but it kind of fleshes out the characters and makes them feel well-realised individuals and characters that you feel as a viewer you kind of get to know. And for me, having kind of believable, relatable characters who feel like they're kind of real people is a huge plus, because it makes you buy into these people and their plight, even if it ends up kind of being, you know, over the top kind of supernatural shenanigans. You know, we've kind of established that these kind of characters seem like believable people, or at least in my opinion, and that was a big thing here. And I have to say, with a slight exception of kind of like the dickish kind of guy, I think everyone did a great job with the acting here. Kind of, I believe their performances, very kind of four different characters, and even the guy who I felt maybe went a little bit over the top sometimes. For the most part, I think he was still pretty fine here. What else can I say that kind of works in this movie? The creature design, we do see a creature, and it is somewhat unique, and they've used kind of practical effects, and we have this kind of reveal at the end, seeing this kind of creature's kind of true form, and they've decided to go for a very kind of unique look, using kind of practical effects, which is kind of maybe something you haven't seen specifically before, albeit it did remind me of something else, which I'll talk about in my maybe not so positive comments, but we'll come on to that. But I have to say, if you like kind of practical monster effects, I think they do a reasonable job here of making somewhat of a kind of unique creature and trying to build the mythology around it. Now, I'm not familiar with this particular kind of legend, if it's a real, quote unquote real legend or something they kind of made up for the film. but it does feel like it's something that would be kind of like, you know, told in kind of stories and things like this, and a cautionary tale, or, you know, of infidelity and things like this. So I appreciate the kind of like the world building of this kind of character. Outside of that, I feel this movie is relatively kind of well shot. It's, you know, it's kind of proficiently made on a technical level. There's some location shooting here. There's kind of like this swampy kind of background that does look pretty good, and it looks kind of scary, obviously, at night, and kind of beautiful kind of during the day, which I think worked. Okay, so maybe what doesn't work in this movie, I think it maybe takes a little bit too long to get going. It's over halfway until we get any type of supernatural action happening, and it's not until really the last 15 minutes until there's any type of genuine type of threat. So I feel the movie's pacing may be an issue for some. Now, I will say, for me personally, I was enjoying the character interactions. So I actually kind of still quite liked the pacing, to be honest with you. It didn't bother me, but looking at it objectively, I can understand people will feel this movie takes kind of a while to get going. If you don't necessarily mind, and you kind of like, you know, like I said, for me, I was kind of bought into the characters, so for me, I didn't find it, but objectively speaking, I think this may be an issue for some. I have to say this movie does have some inconsistencies in regards to its own kind of logic. For example, we're told that there's been a rash of disappearances within this kind of area, so you're led to believe that there's a pre-existing creature within this kind of something going on in this area. But then we see later on that this group of people actually summon this thing, so nothing to do with any type of pre-existing kind of you know, missing people that have gone on. It's just kind of, it doesn't kind of line up really. And also the kind of the mythology in regards to how this kind of creature works, and, you know, it tends to target people that are cheaters or have infidelity, and I'm thinking, okay, so, you know, that again, you kind of boxing yourself into some rules there, and okay, so are we talking people that are married? Are we talking people that are boyfriend and girlfriend, and there is a couple here that are not married, and it still affects them, and think, okay, so, you know, what happens if you've just met someone, and things, it's like, okay, so where do the rules kind of go in this thing? It seems like, I don't know, I can maybe understand if you were married and you've taken vows, and you break them, but I don't know, people dating, it just doesn't seem like it would be feasible, if that makes sense. I know this is a made-up horror film, but I like kind of to have established rules within this. What if someone was like hooking up, and it's like, you know, how does it work? It doesn't kind of, I didn't feel like the kind of mythology was really kind of all that logical to a point. And then even going from that maybe I would say is a little nitpicky. But then this creature seems to still have issues with people who haven't been kind of cheating. So it's kind of, it breaks its own established rules, you know, a couple of times within this film. And again, let's come back to the creature itself. I appreciate this is a lower budget movie. I appreciate the fact that they've gone for a practical monster rather than CGI kind of thing. But I was so reminded of the Troll film whilst seeing this kind of creature. It kind of looks like that type of creature. It's a unique design to a point, but it seems somewhat kind of, how can I put this? It just seemed like a little bit unwieldy, and very much like some type of ogre-y type creature, and it's like, you know, I don't know. For the kind of the story that it's trying to kind of tell, this kind of, we're led to believe that there's this beautiful woman, but she's only got one leg. But we see kind of the beautiful woman version walking around a couple of times with two legs. And then we get this kind of like massive kind of creature with huge forearms and things. It kind of looks, and it looked like, it reminded me of the Troll. So I don't know if the design just looks a bit silly. That's maybe where I'm going on that one, though. The creature designs looked kind of silly, and just the end it felt a little bit kind of rushed and truncated, because I feel it took its time to get there, and we just have these kind of people running around in the woods kind of disobeying the rules that it was kind of set up with at the beginning. So overall, this movie is a little bit of a mixed bag. I still found this movie quite enjoyable, and that's mainly down to, I feel, some good character work and I think good performances by our actors. I just feel when we get to the supernatural stuff, it starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, which is a shame, because I would assume that's probably what people are most interested in. But overall, I still feel this is a reasonable movie. It's an entertaining movie with some interesting sort of characters and character dynamics, and, you know, a reasonable attempt with the kind of the creature itself. That doesn't quite pay off maybe as well as it could, but I'll give this one a 5 out of 10, which is kind of an average score. I try and kind of point out, not necessarily bad, but not really all that great either. So a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing it next time. Bye for now.